Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, October 17th. Let me put my phone on Do Not Disturb. All right, so we are on chapter 7 and 8 of Things Hoped For this week. We finished up with chapters 5 and 6, Field Trip, where Gwen and Robert go to visit the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. And that was the first time Gwen has actually listened to some jazz, followed up by Gwen Crusoe. So she is with Robert, and they have pretty much taken a mini tour of New York City at night. And Gwen takes Robert back to her place, and at the end of chapter 6, she tells him that her grandfather is missing. Now, remember, she has not told anyone this because grandfather's rules, or in his message on the answering machine, he asked her not to tell anyone that he was gone. He did not disclose where he was at or when he was coming back. Hi, Laura. Okay, so that's where we are in our story today. So we are going to listen to chapter 7, and it is titled Buying Time. Now, I recorded myself reading this, and in the midst of my recording, because I have a family like many of you, my children come in the room. So you will hear me pause a little bit because they come in and out of the living room when I recorded this last week. So we're going to listen to chapter 7 and 8, and then we will go back and kind of talk about what has happened in our story. So the only person that knows that Grandpa is missing is Robert. So let's see what they do going forward. And is Uncle Hank going to come back around? What's going to happen with him? Is someone going to find out that Grandpa's not there? So here we go.
Okay.
Hello. Join me as we read chapter 7 and 8. Chapter 7, Buying Time. Friday night ends when Robert leaves around 1 a.m. And before he goes, we've got a plan. I walk him to the door and he says, "You sure you're okay here? Alone and everything?" And the look on his face makes me think he wouldn't enjoy it himself. Me? Sure, I'm fine. And the place has great locks, very secure. Good. So I'll see you tomorrow. And he's gone because I've convinced him that I've got everything under control. But once I'm ready for bed, Gwen, the brave one, seems to be missing in action. This house is older than a violin, and the place breathes and creaks and clanks, especially when the furnace goes on and off during the night. I finally get to sleep by locking the door of my room and leaving the closet light on, and then saying the 23rd Psalm to myself about 15 times. But I still have bad dreams, except now they're about Grandpa. As we plan, Robert comes back to the Page family brownstone around 11 Saturday morning. I'm still carrying his trumpet, and I've got some chocolate croissants and fresh orange juice ready for our breakfast. It's another bright February day, warmer than normal. I'm warmer than normal, too. I can't quite believe what Robert's going to do, but I'm feeling feverish. After we eat and then sit in the parlor reading the Saturday paper a while, it's still about 25 minutes till noon. So I say, "Bring your trumpet and I'll show you my practice room." He picks up the padded case and follows me down to the ground floor where I left my violin. And then we go downstairs to my studio. This is great. He's right. It's not a big space, but the lighting is good and the acoustics are perfect. My grandpa had it built special. First, he drove the carpenter crazy, then the electrician, and then the painter. It's my favorite place in the whole world. And no one can hear you play down here? No one, I said. At least not the violin. Then it's time to give it the trumpet test. Better shut the door. He sets up his horn, and with no warm up, he takes off into the last movement of the Haydn trumpet concerto. It's all from memory, clean and classical. A silver river, almost 5 minutes with no let up. And it's very good. And then effortlessly, he's playing a jazz solo, something I think I've heard before. And it's cool and glassy of the surface, hot and liquid underneath. He leans into the notes, finger on the pearl buttons, turning the air different shades of blue. It could almost change the way a girl feels about jazz. Before he stops, I have my violin out, and as he finishes, I cut in with the runs from the middle of Caprice number 17. It's his turn to listen, and having watched him so closely, now I'm aware of every move I make, every dip of my shoulder, every slash of the bow. And I know Robert's watching my fingers dance the way I watched his. And I get so flustered that I have to stop. He says, "No, keep going, please." I'm blushing, and I say, "Could you maybe not look right at me when I play? It makes me nervous. It's a problem I have. I hate playing solos. And if I ever get an orchestra job I'll never have to play a solo. But you know how it works. Before I get that job, I'll have to do a gazillion auditions. And every audition means I have to play solo. So that's the problem." He nods. I was like that, scared to be out front. I'm playing with the jazz band, and Mr. Sojoros points at me to take a solo, And the drums and the piano have the great rhythm cooking. And I lift up my horn and nothing comes out but little squeaks. Happen over and over. Pitiful. Remember the way he played for John Lennon, I say? But you're not shy now because I saw you last night right there with all those people around us. So how'd you get over it? So she is telling him how she does not like to play by herself. So it's almost like if you had to stand up in front of your entire church and sing in front of everybody. She's nervous. She does not like it. So that's called a solo, when you are performing by yourself with no one else. So she tells him not to look at her as she plays her violin. And so she's talking to him and he's explaining, I felt the same way too. And she's like, how did you feel the same way? Because the other night when we were outside in front of the hotel where John Lennon was killed, you played the trumpet in front of everybody. And so he's explaining to her how he got over being nervous and scared. When I first started teaching, even students and even adults, I would get nervous speaking in front of people. I would get sweaty, my hands would shake, my voice would tremble. So some of us may feel those same emotions when we're having to speak in front of a crowd or talk in front of someone when other people are listening. So we can maybe able to relate to Gwen, okay? So let's listen to how Robert explains how he got over being nervous and scared. This unsettled look zaps across his face just for a second. Then Robert leans towards me and says, the truth, a couple of years ago, well, no, it's a really long story. Distracted by children. He smiles, then looks down and clicks the valve between, but excuse me. He smiles, then looks down and clicks the valve button on his horn. It's the first time I've seen him look flustered. And once again, I have the feeling that my trumpet player is full of surprises, plus a secret or two. Then he says, but let's try something. And he reaches over and flips off the light, which is, in fact, another surprise. This room is 15 feet underground with a double thick door and no windows, complete darkness. And Robert says, now, just play. Is this what you did? Play in the dark to stop feeling shy? So Robert turns off the lights. So Robert says, and tells her to play with the lights off. So now that the lights are off, she can't see Robert, he can't see her. And he tells her to play. Sort of, but don't talk, just play. And then another thought, a big one. Is it because your girlfriend's blind? Is that it? The darkness? Just play, okay? So I do. I take a deep breath. And then the burst of notes that starts the caprice comes winging out of nowhere, filling the space. The staccato runs, the sharp double stops, and the rush and the flutter of the pinch. And it's all as if the music is happening without me. My fingers love the dark. They know where they need to be, and they know what they need to do. And this piece sounds so strong. The music is powerful, and so am I here alone in the dark. But I know I'm not alone. Robert's 3 feet away, or 3 miles. Hard to tell. I'm still playing, whipping my bow from string to string, slashing toward the end. And now I understand why he did it, why Robert shut off the light, so he'd disappear, and me too, because that's what needs to happen. With or without the light, you have to let yourself disappear. After the pianage, it's still for a moment. Then, because I'm truly am from West Virginia, I make my violin squeak like the fiddle. And I begin playing The Water is Wide. It's an ancient tune, deep and dignified. After one verse, this trumpet reaches out. After one verse, his trumpet reaches out and takes the melody. So I weave a simple harmony through the inky air, first high and then from beneath. The folk song ends and the silence is dense and peaceful. I have not felt so much at home in a long time. Out of the darkness, he says, nice. And I whisper, very nice. And then sitting in the dark suddenly seems too weird. So I fumble for the lights. And as we both blink and smile, and I say, your teacher's right. And your girlfriend. You really are good. You too. Thanks. He dries out his trumpet and puts it away. And as I pack up my bow and fiddle, I love my practice room even more. Then Robert looks at his watch and says, it's showtime. I'm following him up the stairs towards the parlor. And I say, do you really think we should do this? I mean, couldn't we get in trouble? He stops and turns and looks down at me from one top step. I don't think there's much risk, and getting your uncle to back off for a week or so doesn't seem wrong. Not at all. You're just trying to keep the house going for your grandpa, which is what he asked you to do, remember? And I know just what I'm going to say. I'm not going to tell any lies. I'm going to make simple truth statements, and I'm going to use an old man voice. So it's not like I'm making a prank call. And what Hank decides to make of it, well, that's his business. I shake my head. Some smart attorney would love to hear you say all that And then she'd tear you up into tiny bits and feed you to the fridge. Turning and walking into the study, Robert says, if everything works out right, that'll never happen. I'm ready to dial. Then, using Grandpa's voice, he says, now, where is that darn telephone number? I can't bear to stay in the study, so I pace back and forth in the parlor. It's not a speakerphone, so I can only hear Robert's half of the conversation. He sounds exactly like Grandpa. Hello? Okay, so what is happening? Remember at the end of chapter 6, Robert surprises Gwen by showing her that he has a special talent. His talent is he can make his voice sound like other people. So Robert is going to call Uncle Hank to pretend that he is Grandpa, to call him to assure him that he's fine and that he doesn't need to come by the house. Because remember, Uncle Hank has been calling and calling and calling, and Grandpa has not answered the phone in about 2 days. So this has Uncle Hank worried and suspicious, so he thinks something is going on. So to prevent Uncle Hank from coming back to the house, they have come up with this plan, okay? So Robert is going to call Uncle Hank, and he is doing what we call voice impressions that he is Grandpa. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. And I'm going to show you a video clip of George Lopez pretending to be Scarface. So it'll give you a visual picture of what Robert is doing in this part of the book. So Robert is going to call Uncle Hank. Okay. So they're playing a trick on Uncle Hank. But Gwen is also worried that they're lying. So Robert decides that he's not going to tell any lies. He's just going to only speak truth statements. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, well, that's none of your business. You can think whatever you want to. Gwenny, she's doing just what she's supposed to do. Can't help that. Well, go ahead and think whatever you want to, but don't come around here. You want to talk? Talk to my lawyer. Then Roberts lets loose with a big coughing fit, and then he's done. He says, and that's the end of it. No, that's the end of it. And then he hangs up. I'm back in the study, and I'm looking at Robert's face. He tries to smile, but it doesn't work. His cheeks are flustered. That guy sounds totally out of it today, yelling and swearing, and he says he's got papers all ready to sign, and he says he needs to borrow some money again, his half of this house, or he's going to lose his business. And he needs to get it settled right now. No wonder your grandfather wanted to get away. I shake my head. If you're saying Grandpa ran away and left me to deal with all this business, he was afraid or something. That's not true. That's not like him at all. You saw those war medals in that parlor? He would never run from a fight. Robert says, okay, but if he knew Hank was so nuts about needing some money and he knew Hank was going to keep pushing, then why do you think your grandfather left all of a sudden? That stops me cold. But then the answer comes to me so clearly. Grandpa must have been pretty sure if he'd stayed, things would have been worse. Worse than this? Robert makes a face. How? I shrug and say, I don't know. And on Saturday, that's true. I don't know how things could be worse, but I'm sure Grandpa wouldn't have made it hard for me, not on purpose. And then I think, wouldn't it be nice if everything always happened on purpose? And then I think, maybe it does. Chapter 8, House Guests. After the phone call to Uncle Hank, we have some lunch before we can spend about 2 hours practicing down in my studio. Me first, then Robert. And then late Saturday afternoon, I asked him about staying the night. I mean, if you want to, you could even check out of your hotel and just stay here until your auditions are done in Grandpa's room, if it's okay with your mom and dad. And you can practice here anytime you want. I keep myself from saying that I don't want to spend another night alone in this house, but I think he knows that. So Gwen asked Robert to stay the night later on that day. So it's Saturday. Grandpa goes missing on Thursday. Okay. And remember, on Tuesday, she has some auditions. So this is Saturday afternoon. And so she offers for Robert to stay the night. Do we remember where Robert is staying in our story? Does anyone remember where is Robert staying? Is he staying with his parents or in a hotel?
Hotel.
He's staying at a hotel. Is his
Yeah.
parents with him?
Huh?
Is his parents in the hotel with him?
To that? That? Yeah.
No.
No?
He's by himself. His parents are at home. His dad had to work, and I think his mom is a professor.
Oh.
So she had to teach. Miss Luna, you'll remember from the first book, Robert's mom was a professor at the local college. So that's where he went to school. Or he didn't go to school, but yeah. So his mom and his father is some type of science geek. He likes science. Okay, so Robert is by himself, remember, in New York. So he's staying in a hotel by himself for the same type of auditions. But good job, Luz. All right, so let's see what happens after she asked him to stay the night. But she said, you can stay the night if it's okay with your mom and dad. Do you think his mom and dad are going to be okay with him staying the night with Gwen?
No.
No. I wouldn't. Smiles and nods. That's a great idea. And my folks will like it. Me being at someone's house instead of a hotel. Staying with this kid I know from Tanglewood. Robert's already composing what he's going to say to his parents. He leaves and comes back about 6. Distracted by children. Sorry, guys. Lord have mercy, I can't see. About 6:30 with a rolling suitcase and a backpack and a bag of Chinese food, which is good because I'm famished. After we've each wolfed down some egg rolls and chicken with pea pods, I asked, so what did your parents say when you told them about staying here? He keeps busy with his chopsticks, talking between bites. My dad was fine with it, but then my mom said she wanted to talk to your grandfather, and I told her that he's away for a while, and then she got all mothered out. So I just said, well, this is what I'm doing because I'm sure it's all right. And if you were here, you'd know it was all right too. But you're not, so you'll have to take my word for it. And I checked out of the Empire, and here I am. Then, when we're done eating, he says, so who's got the practice room first tonight, you or me? I don't mind taking the late shift, which is perfect for me because I had the early practice this afternoon, and I'm ready to take another run at my pieces, especially the Bach Parchados. I'm at the top of the stairs when Robert says, have you ever played a fiddle tune for your teacher in Manhattan? Because you should. I make a face. Bad idea. And Parchado Manya Vox would not be amused. He's very formal. Doesn't mean he won't like it, because you should be using that, the energy of the feelings. You have heard the CD called Appalachian Journey. I shake my head. Bluegrass? Yeah, Yo Mama and Mark O'Connor on, cannot see. Sorry guys. Ooh, okay. It's Yo Yo Ma with Mark O'Connor on violin and Edgar Meyer on bass. All 3 of them classical and geniuses. And you should hear what they do with a bunch of old melodies. And you're saying that it flows both ways. Classical training is great, but there's stuff way back in the mountains that's just as important. As Bart Och, as Sibelis. They know about folk music. I'm just saying you should use everything you've got. And your teacher would say the same thing, unless he's an idiot. End of lecture. I nod and say, "Thank you, Professor." And he grins and bows stiffly. As I walk down to the practice room, I have to admit it's good advice. So they are at Gwen's house and they're about to go down to the practice rooms in her house to practice. So remember, because they are trying to get in very prestigious or well-known music schools, okay, they have to do a lot of practicing. So they practice 2 to 3 hours a day, even after they come from school where they've practiced all day. So it's in the evening, it's about 6:30, and they're getting ready to practice again. So they're discussing who is going to practice first. And Robert tells Gwen that she should play some of her fiddle songs or bluegrass, that she sounds very good playing it. And when she plays the music, she has a lot of passion when she plays the violin. So he is making that suggestion to her, but Gwen feels like if it's not classical music, her teachers won't like it. Okay, so that is the conversation that they are having here in the story. Because it's like I have one head and it's filled with fiddle tunes and denim overalls, and a newer head that's all sheet music and crystal chandeliers and people wearing tuxedos and evening gowns. And sometimes I feel like I have to stop being my old self when I play classical music. So she is kind of torn between playing music from West Virginia, which is bluegrass, and playing classical music. Okay. So she is torn between the two because she's from West Virginia, and her culture of playing when she first started in music, she played the fiddle from West Virginia. So she is familiar with that type of music. And now she has fallen in love with classical music where she plays the violin. So she has learned to play two different instruments, two types of genres of music, bluegrass and classical. Okay.
Okay.
But this is not a problem I want to tackle tonight. Tonight, I have a different task. At the bottom of the basement stairs, I imagine that it's Tuesday morning and I'm walking along a hallway at Juilliard because I'm pretending that I'm actually taking my first audition. I walk into the room and close the door behind me. I prepare my bow and violin and the test and the tuning. I nod respectively at each of the faculty members, and I imagine that they asked me to play first. Then I look briefly up at the ceiling to clear my mind, and I begin. And suddenly, I'm also imagining that the lights have clicked off, that no one can see me, and it helps. It's only the music, and I don't stop for anything. I play. So as she's going into her practice room, she is pretending that these are her auditions. Okay. She is pretending that she walks into the room, she closes the door behind her, she bows in front of the audience, she takes her violin up and tests it out and gets ready to play. So all of this practicing is preparing her for her auditions that are coming up. Okay.
Okay.
Getting into college is different for a music student. It's not just what were your grades, and it's not which clubs did you belong to, and were you class president, and it's not what are your SAT scores. The question for a music student is so simple, only 3 words: can you play? Can you walk into this audition room and play today, right now, without messing up? And you only get one chance to get it right, because that's how you have to play music in the real world in a performance. You practice and you practice and you rehearse. And when it's time for the performance, you come on stage, take your place. Then the conductor raises the baton and nods. And if you don't come on in on the right beat and with the right notes and the right pitch and the right attack, then you've let down the conductor and you've let down the entire 95 musicians in the orchestra, and you've let down the audience. And of course, you've stabbed your bow straight through the heart of the composer, because the only question is, can you play? On Saturday night, I feel confident, and it's a good rehearsal, almost 2 hours of Sibelius, winning the prize for the most improved composer at Pianage, a close second. When I come back to the parlor, Robert is sitting in Grandpa's recliner, eyes closed, head tipped back, and his earbuds in, and his iPod resting on the arm of the chair. I tiptoe over and look at the little screen to see what he's listening to. Kind of Blue. It's Miles Davis, jazz. And I remind myself that sometimes I have to ask Robert how he connects his jazz with his classical playing, because I'm sure he's got a theory behind that. I've known him for less than 2 days, and he's already perfectly clear that Robert has at least one theory about everything in the universe. I touch him on the shoulder, and he jumps up like he's been half asleep, and it takes him a second to recognize me. He pulls out his earphones and says, I say, your turn to practice. Great. And Robert gets out of the chair and heads downstairs. First, I finish loading the dinner dishes into the dishwasher, and then I put clean sheets and pillowcases on Grandpa's bed and open the window to air out the room. As I put clean towels in the bathroom, that's when I noticed that Grandpa didn't take his hairbrush and comb, or his toothbrush or electric razor, which seems odd that he'd leave in that much of a hurry. And right away, I want to try to figure out what that might mean. Of course, it might just mean that he decided to take one of those plastic disposable razors instead of the electric one, and that he took one of those new toothbrushes that his dentist always gives him. And who knows how many combs and brushes he owns. Or it could be that since he was in a hurry, Grandpa just forgot. Everybody forgets stuff. Even though I can find all these perfectly logical explanations, my worries follow me around like a dark swarm of bees. And I run to the creek, and I dive deep down, and I hold my breath as long as I can. But when I come up gasping for air, I can still hear the buzzing. And once again, I try to take some shelter in Grandpa's last order of me. You just keep about your own business and leave all the worrying to me. So now she's starting to worry again about Grandpa. So while she's in his room preparing the bedroom for Robert to sleep in for the night, she notices that he doesn't take personal items that you would normally take if you're going on a trip. So normally when you're packing to go away for a few days, you take your comb, you take your brush or your curlers, you take your toothbrush, but Grandpa leaves all of this stuff behind. Okay. So now she's like, did he leave it because he just forgot? Or did he leave it because he was in such a rush to get out of there? So now all of these little things that have happened have her worried again. And she tries not to worry. She tries to remember what Grandpa says. You just keep about your business and leave all the worrying to me. Okay. So let's see what Grandpa and his orders. My dad said that time in the army does that to a man, makes him think like a soldier for the rest of his life, especially if he's been to war. I finish my chores, then I curl up on the couch with a book of poems. But I get up after a few minutes and go to the study. I roll Grandpa's desk chair out of the way, and I reach up and pull Pride and Justice off the shelf for the third time, because tonight doesn't feel like a Yeats night. This is a Jane Austen night. I turn to go back to the parlor, but I stop because I hear something. There's music playing. And at first, I think it's the radio from upstairs, but it's not. It's Robert. I pull out the chair and sit down, and I can hear the slow movement of Haydn trumpet concerto drifting up out of the metal vent in the floor. It's not loud, but it's clear. The music is beautiful, and that's not why my eyes fill with tears. It's because I never knew. Grandpa could have had a carpenter block every bit of sound from below, but he didn't. He saved some for himself, just a little, so he could sit here when he wanted to and listen to me play my violin. And I never knew. I smile when Robert ends the moment with a long, fluttering trill, and then I wipe my eyes and I carry Pride and Justice back into the parlor. I lie down again on the couch and I open the book and I begin to read. But on this particular Saturday night, I ask myself, why do I like this book so much? Because someone could read this book and think it's just a sappy story about this girl and her sisters and how they're all trying to desperately get married to find the men who will save them from being old maids. Truth? I have given no serious time in my life to love and romance, almost zero. Since seventh grade, I have never dreamed of anything except becoming a great violinist in a great orchestra. And even now, this is still my top priority. But here I am reading Pride and Justice again. I flip ahead until I find the last chapter. And after reading a page or two, I realize it's the main character, Elizabeth. She's the reason I love this book. Lizzie is smart, and she's not just going along with what everyone else expects her to do. She's just got everyone figured out, except for Mr. Dancy and herself. But that comes full circle by the end. And I love that Jane Austen's use of language too, the way she takes her time to develop a phrase and gives it room to grow, so that these clever, complex statements from slowly and then bloom in my mind. Beethoven does the same thing with his cadence and phrasing and structure. It's a fact. Jane Austen is musical, and so's Yeats and Wordsworth, and all the great writers are musical. Thank you again, Miss Page, for more brilliant literary insights. When Robert comes back upstairs, I don't tell him that I listened to him playing from the study. That's a secret, mine and Grandpa's. Robert and I serve ourselves some ice cream, chocolate for him, vanilla for me. We put on the tube and catch some Saturday Night Live, but I'm too worn out to keep my eyes open. I've got to go to sleep now. Eyes on the screen, Robert says, "Okay, see you tomorrow." Then he turns and smiles and thanks for asking me to stay. This is really great. I nod, for me too. And I go downstairs and get ready for bed. And before I close the door, I listen at the bottom of the stairs. I can hear the TV, so I call good night. But Robert must be in Grandpa's room already because he doesn't answer. So I shut the door and I lie down and turn off the light. Then I count my blessings. And the last thing I do is say a prayer for my grandpa. And I hope that he has a nice new toothbrush. All right. Let me close that out. That is chapter 8. Let me pull back up my presentation. Oh, little dog. Oh no, that's not what I want to do. Okay. So now we are on chapter 7. Let's quickly recap what has happened. So at the end of chapter 8, Gwen notices that while she is upstairs in the parlor, she thinks that she can't hear Robert playing downstairs, but she notices that she can hear him playing just a little bit. So in her mind, she always believed that Grandpa could not hear her playing. She thought she was playing downstairs in a soundproof room. But in reality, he did not have the room fully soundproof. So he could hear her play just a little bit. And so that makes her feel special inside because he kept something for himself. He kept a little bit of her music that he could hear her playing for himself. Okay. So in chapter 7, We know that Robert is concerned about her being alone in the house. So he asked her, do you want me to stay tonight? And the first night she says, no, I'm good. Okay. Then Robert goes home that night, and then he comes back Saturday morning. So that's Friday night. He comes back Saturday morning to spend the day with her, and they come up with a plan about what they're going to do about Grandpa being missing. Okay. So while Robert is there, Gwen takes Robert to her practice room. So remember, her practice room is like a small room, and Grandpa had a carpenter build it in such a way that if you were playing loud music or singing, you could not hear it in the rest of the house. Okay. So she takes Robert to her practice room. Next, Robert plays jazz for Gwen. So then she hears jazz at the concert that they went to, but she's never heard him play jazz before. So he decides to play for her downstairs. So after he plays, they talk about this plan, and Robert reveals how he's going to call Uncle Hank to pretend to be Grandpa. But Gwen is a little nervous, just a little bit, about what is going to happen. Okay. So remember, I told you that Robert has a special talent. He can impersonate other people. So visualizing that may be difficult. So I looked on YouTube to try to find a little snippet. So this is George Lopez pretending to be Scarface. So this is a visual to get you to understand how Robert is pretending to be Grandpa. Now, I'm not going to play the whole thing because he uses inappropriate language. So I'm just going to play only 30 seconds. And I looked a long time to find a video. So here we go. Hold on.
At Vistaprint, we can get your...
Can y'all see that? Yes, no?
Yes.
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 brand into your customers' hands, or their heads, or their backs.
Ladies and gentlemen, George Lopez.
So he is pretending to be him from the movie Scarface.
Help! I live! It was a flesh wound, man, superficial. Stuff like that. You need...
Okay, I'm going to stop it there because he uses inappropriate language. So you get the idea of how Robert pretends to be Grandpa. I'm not going to keep playing it because he does not use good language. All right. And that is where we are in the book. Chapter 8 was really them practicing in the practice room. Not much happened in chapter 8 other than the fact that Gwen realizes that Grandpa could actually hear her playing in the background. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing. All right, so we are done for tonight, ladies. Are there any questions about anything we've covered tonight?
No.
No? Okay. All right, so next week we will meet on Monday. I will send a reminder on Sunday and I will send a reminder on Monday. If you cannot make it, it's not a problem. I will record and send you the recording, but we won't meet on Tuesday because my son has a school performance. And then the following Tuesday is Halloween. And I know some of you have little ones that may want to go out to celebrate Halloween. So we will meet on Monday, the October 30th. So the next 2 weeks, we will meet on Monday at 7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah. Thank you. See you next Monday.
Thank you.